Okay, the question and answer period is ended. We're going to start our regular speaker right now. Speaker is Brendan Kidwell, who is coming us from New York. He's a longtime BLU member. Used to go to all the Cambridge Brewery after meetings. And Brendan, you can do the rest of the intro.
Okay. I'm just going to start sharing my entire screen and then minimize the meeting. Okay, so you can see a web page on the left. Can you all hear me?
Yes, okay. We can see the red one.
So I'm Brendan Kidwell. I used to live in Boston and I moved to New York City 2012, 2013, something like that, a while ago. And I've been on and off member of the club for a long time. My day job is I have a salary job at a giant company building websites and web applications for all kinds of things, internal projects and external projects for clients. And on the side, I just kind of hack around with IT stuff. I like to make software, write how-tos, do presentations like this. And so I've got my own home file server right now. It's a Raspberry Pi 4 with 8 gigs of RAM, and I really love it. It's a nice machine. It only draws about 5 or 10 watts. And a while ago, I installed Google Docs. I mean, not Google Docs. Instead of Google Docs, I installed SeaFile and LibreOffice Online. LibreOffice Online is by Collabora. They're the ones that that's kind of the commercial company that does most of the financial support for the LibreOffice project. And so with those two things together on my file server, I get nice, I've got file sharing with myself, file sharing with other people. I can create collections. I can synchronize them. I think I have the client running on this machine. Yep, there's the SeaFile for Windows. There's a Linux desktop version. There's an Android version. There's probably an iOS version, but I don't really use iOS much, so I couldn't say. I'm pretty sure there's a Mac desktop version. And this SeaFile client will ping the server periodically and ask if there are any changes. And every time you change files locally, it'll push them up to the server right away. It detects conflicts and it'll show you on the client side, I've got 2 versions of this file. What are you going to do about it? And so that's all SeaFile. And I also managed to install the Collabora LibreOffice Online. And that gives me the entire, well, most of the LibreOffice document editor suite in a server client program where the client is your browser. And you've probably used Office 365 before, and you probably used Google Docs before. And I'm pretty sure that the way that LibreOffice Online works is a little bit different. It's actually a graphical program running on the server in the server's process space, and it boots up a JavaScript-based terminal emulator specialized for LibreOffice. It boots that up in your browser, and your browser connects the terminal emulator to the graphical server process running on the server. So the upshot of that is that the actual UI code that says, I want to put widgets here and draw them this way and order them this way, that's all the same code that you're using in the LibreOffice desktop build that you get from the Ubuntu package repositories and the Red Hat and all the other OSs. And I don't know why I just tried to open this Alice in Wonderland document and nothing has happened. It's running on a Raspberry Pi. I may have killed it. I've used it before. I've done spreadsheets in it. Let's try it again. And I am going to show you how I installed most of this stuff. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a glitch, but I'll get to that when I get to the installation part of this presentation. Let's see if this works. Oh, okay, there's a... Huh. Okay, let's try the other browser with my different profile. This is going to be a whole presentation of failures. I am excited about these products, but this is definitely not for people who, this isn't your first server build project. I have no idea why the other browser environment with a different profile wouldn't load this document, but this is what the word processor looks like. The ribbon, and I'm not sure if you can change it from a ribbon to a regular menu, but this is the same set of widgets that are in your desktop version. And on the right-hand side, the style palette and all the other palettes that you can show up over here, they're all the same. I converted this document from HTML just before the presentation. I don't know why the images are dead, but if you insert images, it does work. Basically, the products work, but as you'll see when I get to the installation part of the presentation, I had a lot of trouble, and this isn't amateur stuff. It isn't just download it and run a simple PHP program and install Apache PHP plugin and you're good to go. It's a lot more complicated than that. And I'm not going to go through every single detail, but I wrote up a lot of it in the how-to document, and we're going to go through it. So feel free to interrupt me as I'm talking. And oh yeah, also I forgot to mention this presentation is licensed under a CC license, Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike 4.0 International. That's the license on my website. And you can follow along with the how-to, unfinished how-to, as I present. You can go to www.clump.net and just follow the link on the homepage to the first featured article. Anybody have any questions before I move on to how to install this? Okay. So installation-wise, I had to cut a little bit out of the agenda because I had some trouble last night, and that's why I'm telling you this is not a project for amateurs. I don't know if it's because I'm using my Raspberry Pi as a proxy between me and the public internet, because that's the machine that's listening on port 80. I thought I had that working last night, and I started to set up Let's Encrypt, and Let's Encrypt is like, oh, I really need to connect on port 80 if I'm going to do web-based authentication of your host name. Oh, by the way, if for anyone who doesn't know, Let's Encrypt is a free public certificate authority. If you can prove that you own a subdomain or a host name on a domain, if you can prove that you own it either by editing DNS or by putting a public file on a certain URL on HTTP plain text port 80 on that host name, either that or DNS, putting a secret token there, then it will give you automatically a free certificate for TLS that lasts for, I think, 3 months. They may have shortened it, but the idea is that everyone should now set up encryption on all of their websites, and there shouldn't be any excuses except that it didn't work. There shouldn't be any excuses, and you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to deal with billing. You just talk to the bot, and it gives you a cert. So I was trying to set that up last night for SeaFile and LibreOffice together. SeaFile and LibreOffice Online really want to talk to each other with their the public internet host name that you have for the machine. And if it's private, if it's completely inside of a private network, then you don't really need encryption. You don't need HTTPS probably. But if you're going to be having it on the public network at all, if you're going to be using the sharing feature and give it to somebody else who's outside of your private network, if you're going to be doing that, you need to just set it up on the public network with a public host name, with a Let's Encrypt cert, or with a paid cert. And I was trying to do that last night, and I got kind of stuck. Let's Encrypt would not work. Initially, I was using afraid.org DNS, which is public free DNS host names. And then I realized that Let's Encrypt only allows 50 certs per domain name per week. And that kind of gives you trouble when you're sharing a domain with thousands of other people on a free.org. So we'll cut that out of the how-to. I tried to use my own domain name, glump.net. That's mine, and I don't have a lot of services running on it. And I tried to set up host names for this demo on that. And uh, I just literally could not get Let's Encrypt to talk through my proxy server all the way back to my demo server to do the handshake and get it done. And this was like an hour ago, and I was just like, well, screw it. I guess we're just going to be talking about everything but Let's Encrypt and everything, and not LibreOffice Online, because I'm not going to get that integrated with SeaFile. So what we are going to cover is, I'm going to assume you have a blank Ubuntu 22.04 virtual machine. You could use any other OS. SeaFile is not locked to Ubuntu, but that's what I use, and that's the way this demo is written. We're going to set up encrypted storage on the local project machine in such a way that we're not using full disk encryption, because if you do that, um, if you've ever done it before, you know that you pretty much need a console attached to the machine. You need that console online every time you reboot the machine. It comes up and displays, I need a password, and you type it on the keyboard and you keep going. We're not going to use full disk encryption. We're going to use GoCryptfs, and we're going to integrate it with systemd in such a way that systemd is going to boot up just enough to start SSH, and then it's going to stop and send me an email over SMTP. I'm going to get it in my email box and say, oh, the server rebooted. I've got to log in. SSH in, manually type in the password, unlock encryption. And then when that happens, systemd is going to say, okay, it's time to start all the other services that I had running. And that scheme is what I'm using on all of my personal servers. I've got a personal server at home, the Raspberry Pi, and I've got a cloud server at Tornado VPS. And that scheme is working very well for me. So that's encrypted storage after notifying the sysadmin to log in SSH. And then we're going to go through installing SeaFile internally in my private network without using a public host name and without using no access to the outside internet. We're not going to use the sharing features, because that's just literally as far as I got. And I don't have working notes for Collabora or LibreOffice Online. So that's my intro, and we'll go right into it. Any questions before I continue? Okay. So let's see, there's my assumptions. I already said that. We're using Nano to edit the text files. I assume you're behind a NAT at home and you can edit your port forwarding, but we're skipping the NAT. We're skipping the public internet access. Just go straight to the internal stuff. When I get a clean Ubuntu 22.04 VM, the first thing I do is I install Avahi daemon, which is the same thing as ZeroConf. It's the same thing as Apple's Bonjour. And what that does, I install that on one of those things on all of my machines inside the network. And that way you're not relying on Samba or NetBIOS or all the other old stuff for name resolution, and you're not relying on IP addresses. Avahi daemon will just use the ZeroConf protocol and say, hey, everybody on the network, I'm this IP address and I'm this host name, and here's all the services I'm running. We're not using that last statement. We're just using the first two, that this host name is this IP address. And then that way I don't have to write down IP addresses and copy and paste them all over the network. I already did that at the point where I rolled my snapshot back. So if I start up a Windows terminal here, I'm on a Windows machine. If I ping my project server, tulip.local, name resolution should be working. And there it is, it found it. So I've already got that running. My server is Tulip, and I'm logged into it over SSH. And let's move straight on to encrypted storage. And if you're really not worried about the contents of your server, and you don't, if a thief breaks into your home and runs off with your hard drive, if that doesn't bother you at all, you can just skip the encrypted storage part. It's completely optional. But I'm going to show you how to do it, because that's what makes me comfortable with my stuff. I like to know that if somebody walks off with my hardware, well, at least they can't read it. And so let's see. I'm going to install GoCryptFs. None of these steps will take too long. So we've got GoCryptFs installed, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a container with 2 folders. Under the SRV folder, that's where you store stuff that belongs to services on this machine. Where's my mute key? I'll just hold on a moment. Excuse me. So in the SRV folder, we're going to create 2 folders to contain the encrypted file system. We're going to create a priv.encrypted, and that's going to be the encrypted version. And then the priv is just going to be a placeholder for the overlay file system that is GoCryptFs. So I'll go ahead and do these commands now. And then I'm going to initialize the GoCryptFs container. Okay, now it's going to ask for a password. This is it wants a new password now. Think of a password, record it however you can that is secure so that the thief can't find it, and do not lose it. If you lose the password for an encrypted container like this, the only way you'll ever get the data back is if you managed to guess your password. If you can't guess it, you're never going to see it again, probably. I'm just going to use my weak project password for this, for the demo. Here's your master key. That master key is stored in the GoCryptfs.conf file. If you screw up that file, you're going to need that key again. So save this in your password file as well, if you'd like, or just hope for the best. Whatever. Moving on, let's test mounting it. The password. Mounted under /serve/priv. And do stuff with it. That's good. So that's initialized. And now we want to put it into fstab and do all the systemd stuff I was talking about. And I'm just going to copy this straight out of the how-to. And testing it. It works from sftab. It's giving a little warning here that you use the allow other flag so that other users besides root can see the file system, and that's definitely what we want because we're going to be putting all of our application data in there, and that's not going to be running as root. Okay, moving on. Let's create a we're going to create a new target in systemd is kind of like run levels that you had in the past with system 5 init and the other init systems. We're going to create a new run level called before decrypt. And then we're going to rearrange the chairs and the furniture so that when the system is booting up, it's going to get to before decrypt. And all this other stuff is going to say, well, I'm waiting for before decrypt to be resolved. And then the other stuff is going to start. I derived this from somebody else's how-to, and I don't understand systemd very well, but this is a bit of cargo cult programming, but I did get it to work. This works reliably, not so much the let's encrypt stuff. And let's see. We want to create a folder of stuff that Before Decrypt needs. And then we're going to go to that folder. And then we're going to make symlinks to a bunch of things from another run level. Create a decrypted.target. Remember to download these files so they're not indented. Now this is a service that is going to actually unlock. Oh, now that this is related to all the other services that are. I don't know where I am in the how-to now, but just cargo cult all this stuff and it'll work great, or it'll destroy your system, one or the other. Now we're going to create a shell script that is. Shell script is going to actually do the unlocking of the encrypted storage by calling GoCryptfs, or it's going to mount. I've lost track of where the actual mount command was. It's in here somewhere. We're having fun. Do I have it mounted now? Yeah, I do. Okay, that worked. And if I run it again, it's going to say you've already got it mounted. Or not. Oh, it already, there's a typo in there. Oh, no, I've got a. Oops. Okay, I'm already mounted. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's done. Now let's do the sending an email after rebooting. So, install MSMTP, which is a simple mail transfer agent that doesn't queue anything in the Ubuntu repositories. It just takes a message from the command line and connects to an SMTP server and then lets the remote relay handle everything from there. And after we install MSMTP, we need to disable the AppArmor profile for it because that gets in the way. You may notice that I triggered yes on the would you like to configure AppArmor because I'm not really sure what happens if I say no. Now let's make a config file. I've got to stop sharing my screen while I pull my app password out of my password file, and then I'll start sharing again. I actually forgot to write it down. I'll have to create another one. All right, sorry for the wait. I'm sharing my screen again. And now if I create a script that will send a message directly from a command line parameter. I need to fill in my address in here. And you'll see that I'm tagging the subject line with the project name so that when I receive the mail, I'll know what that is. And let's try it. Hopefully I filled in the parameters correctly. I'm guessing it didn't work right. Oh, fastmail.com. I'll be back in a moment. And there we go. So it can send email from the command line now. Back to the how-to. Just need to enable the service. Or did I create that service? Nope, I need to do that. And let's see what happens when I reboot it. Uh, 1939 is the previous one. It's booting up. And there you go. So I hope that was worth the price of admission. Now let's start installing MySQL and MariaDB, and SeaFile. And don't forget, now that we've set up the encrypted storage, we actually have to run that unlock script every time. That's the whole reason for that email is now I've got to log in and run unlock.
I got a quick question. I know if you're using
And now storage is ready. Go ahead, Jabber.
I know if you're using MariaDB. Does this work with PostgreSQL as well, or does it require MariaDB specifically?
I'm pretty sure that SeaFile works with a number of databases, definitely SQLite. And I just chose MariaDB, which is that it's intercompatible with MySQL. One's a fork of the other. I'd be surprised if it doesn't work with Postgres. Recommended requirements. Okay, yeah, but what's the software database? Or maybe not. No, it looks like it might actually require a MariaDB or MySQL. That's interesting. I thought I used to work with SQLite. Maybe I'm thinking of another project. So yeah, if you're a Postgres diehard, either suck it up or you're not going to like it. So I'm going to show you how to install MariaDB with encrypted storage. Now, if you're setting up your own machine and you didn't do encrypted storage, this whole green thing you can just skip. But this only takes a few minutes. So MariaDB server and MariaDB client. And this block here, I'm just going to copy and paste the whole thing. This is going to stop MariaDB. It's going to make a directory called servpriv, that's my encrypted volume, /var/lib. And then it's going to move the MySQL folder from the root var/lib folder to the priv var/lib folder that's under the encrypted tree. And then it's going to create an empty directory where I moved the MySQL folder out of, make that directory owned by MySQL. MariaDB uses the code name MySQL because it's a fork. And then I'm going to create an entry in FS tab to say bind the servpriv var lib MySQL folder to var lib MySQL. And that has the effect of relocating MySQL's data directory to the encrypted container. And we've already programmed systemd so that it doesn't start services like this until after I do the unlock script. So let's go ahead and do all this. And paste in the FS tab entry. And then I need to add in here, take out this comment and say we need to mount /var lib MySQL. And that worked. And let's go into that folder. There's my MySQL data, still there. And start my Maria back up. And now Maria is installed, but it's not configured yet. We need to, oh, no, it is configured. We just need to create the databases for the Tulip project. So SeaFile uses three separate database schemas, and I'm going to call them SeaFile, SeaFile Hub, and SeaFile CCNet. I don't know which is which as far as the databases are concerned, but there's two different SeaFile processes. One is the front-end HTTP server that does the web pages, and then the other one is SeaFile Hub, which is the back-end REST API to your files. And I think the SeaFile client on your desktop talks to the SeaFile Hub, and the web page JavaScript talks to SeaFile Hub. And SeaFile CCNet, I don't even know what that is for, but I don't think it's a separate process, but it needs that database. And I'm just going to copy and paste this into here, one of them. And I already created a password earlier for the database. Let's call it propose greeter. And then just drop this into the terminal, and the databases should be ready to go. I should probably flush privileges. Okay, back where we left off. We're going to
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, we're going to skip DNS, that whole topic, because that's for public host names connecting into my server. As I described in the beginning of this presentation, I was not able to get my notes ready in a state that actually worked. So we're just going to skip that. We're only going to access my SeaFile project from inside of my local network. And so here's the steps to install SeaFile. It doesn't take that long. We need to install some Ubuntu packages for Python. I'll paste that here. And then we need to install some PyPy packages using the pip command. Which services do you want to be restarted? All of them. Here's the PyPy packages I want. And then we need to create a user for SeaFile. I think I may end up compiling stuff. No, that was another project I was trying to install another day. Everything's ready for SeaFile. Create a user, create a system user called SeaFile. It's going to go in the home directory. Password, same project password. Don't need any of these fields. And first I'm going to do a terminal multiplexer, BYOBU. This is a nice little tool that comes with Ubuntu. And if you set it for screen mode, then all I remember and all I need to know is Control AC. Oh, I've got to say screen mode, number one. Okay, Control AC creates a new window. And Control A switches windows. And that's all I remember, and that's all I really need. I know you can do a lot with tmux or screen using the BLU front end, but that works for me. So now we're logged in as SeaFile, and we're going to make a directory. I think we're about maybe 10 minutes or so from having SeaFile up on the screen. And we're going to get this URL from the install using MySQL instructions. Scroll down to, where's the tar? Oh, go to the download page and then get the server 64-bit Intel, copy, and wget, paste that URL. And SeaFile likes to keep all the installed packages you ever installed. It likes to keep them all under the SeaFile folder. So if you install new ones, you're actually going to create new folders under SeaFile for each of the new versions. And the theory is that if something breaks, you can roll it back because you've still got all the code from the previous release still sitting there. That A was a typo in the ZAXF, but I don't think it hurt anything. Here's my SeaFile 905 folder. And we're going to run setup SeaFile MySQL. And the script is going to set you up. What's the name of the server? Tulip. What is the IP address of the server? I'm just going to, the IP address or domain, I'm going to put in my local network name, tulip.local. That was what was working in zeroconf. And what port do you want to run the file server on? I'm going to use the default 8082. It does not ask you what port you want to run the main front end server on. It's going to put on port 8000 by default without asking if you want to change it. But I do have instructions in my how-to for how to change that if you wanted to. Do we want to create a new database? No, we want to use existing because I already created that in the previous step. The MySQL server is localhost 3306. The user is SeaFile. And the password is in this file over here. And the database for CCNet is going to be SeaFile CCNet. Database for SeaFile is SeaFile. And the last one is SeaFile Hub. And everything looks good. I'm going to hit enter to continue. It's creating database tables and schema stuff. And let's see. Now we want to edit ccnet.conf. Wrong folder. Go up one. And in ccnet.conf, we need to add this under general. We're going to do service URL equals. I think you can skip some of these steps, but I've found in my installations, which are tricky enough as it is, if you spell out in the config file that this is literally my external URL for the installation, then parts of it get less confused. So we're going to be using port 80 plain text on the hostname tulip.local. I'm going to install Apache in front of it in a few minutes. It's not sudo. Service URL, it got it right in here, tulip.local. File server root. I guess I need that stuff. And let's make that HTTP port 80 tulip.local. And I think Windows and Linux hosts. I think Windows and Linux. Oh yeah, when I set this up the other day, I spelled the name wrong. They use zeroconf and avihis differently, and if I want to put in this resolve tulip.local to the actual localhost address for sure, and if I don't do this, I think Linux might have trouble finding stuff on the .local domain. I think it just wants no domain at all for it to work. But if I put that in there, I've hard-coded that host is definitely going to resolve the host that I just put into my service URL and file server URL. Now we need to create a service description for systemd. And I'm in my Brendan user again. That's the one that's the sysadmin of the machine. And we need to create another systemd service for the hub process. Hopefully I won't get any errors from this. Okay, now the storage for SeaFile. Storage for SeaFile is under the home folder, which is not currently encrypted. Also doesn't have any files in it yet. But here's another green block with a to-do icon. We're going to move this over to the encrypted storage and restart SeaFile. Same thing we did with MySQL. So then that's going to be the data files, the actual file payloads, not just the metadata, is also going to be in encrypted storage. Worry about that socket file. The Raspberry Pi just screams. Oh wait, no, that's not a Raspberry Pi. That's my virtual machine on my very expensive work laptop. Go faster. So now home/cfile is mounted from serve priv.encrypted/home/cfile. And I've got a party going on downstairs. I hope you can't hear that. SeaFile and CHub are coming back up with no error. And then we'll install Apache and at least SeaFile will be working. So I'm going to go ahead and put Apache in front of it. And the reason I'm installing Apache here is because this is a home file server that might end up with a lot of services running on it. And you don't want to have the first thing, SeaFile, using port 80. You want to have that off on its own port and its own host name. And later you can set up more host names and more ports on the internal machine, and they're all answering on port 80 or port 443 hosted by Apache. That's why we're doing this. So I installed the system package for Apache. I'm going to enable a couple of Apache modules, which services should be restarted. They don't need to be. A2 enable mod proxy HTTP, proxy WS tunnel. That's actually only needed for LibreOffice, which we're not going to get working. And we probably need rewrite. We're going to skip the SSL stuff, and we're going to create a site called tulip.conf. Now, if you're a Red Hat CentOS person, you might be familiar with the way HTTPD from Apache is installed in CentOS. I'm slightly familiar with it. I'm much better with Ubuntu, but I am aware that Ubuntu does this system with the layout in /etc/Apache 2. It has, you're not going to worry too much about mods available to mods enabled. You can just use that script a2 enmod and a2 dismod to turn them on and off. What you're going to be doing a lot of on a multi-service host in Ubuntu is you're going to go into the sites available folder, create a site that's going to be a virtual host, and then a2 site, and then type out the name. So we're going to go ahead and do that now for the virtual host called tulip.local. And port 80 tulip.local. And we're going to skip the redirect to HTTPS because we couldn't get that working. Skip the SSL config. There's the SeaFile stuff. We're forwarding SeaFile. CF HTTP is a shortcut that goes to that SeaFile hub service. That all looks good. The main program is running on the root path of port 8000. And then we do sudo a2 ensite tulip to System control, reload Apache. And now let's close all these other windows and go to tulip.local. It didn't work. What did I do wrong? Didn't put a period in here. And congratulations, SeaFile is online. I skipped a step somewhere in here. Admin, there's a SeaFile command that creates an admin user. Over to my SeaFile window, and I want to run root home/CFile/CFile server latest /reset admin. Cool. Didn't happen yesterday. Not access parent directories, no such file or directory. Oh, that's anticlimactic. Let's try going into that folder. Oh, good, it worked. Email address, clump.net, password, project password. Now I should be able to log in. And by the way, funny thing about SeaFile, you can't, I don't know how to change this. Remember me for 7 days. Why can't you remember me for a year? But it does allow the browser to save the password. Some sites prevent that for some reason. Welcome to SeaFile, yada, yada, yada. Here's your empty repository. So that ends the installation demo. And now we'll basically move into a Q&A. And does anybody want to demo any certain features or ask questions about the product? Ask me about LibreOffice, which I wasn't able to demo very well. I open the floor.
Okay, thanks, Brendan.
And just to reiterate, this demo was supposed to have LibreOffice by Collabora, the online web application, and I wasn't able to get it to talk to SeaFile and SeaFile to talk to LibreOffice and get Let's Encrypt working, and I just had to cut myself short and say this is as far as I got. If you check back on this page on glump.net about a month from now, hopefully I will have fixed my how-to so that if you do it, the steps will actually work. But right now it's kind of incomplete and doesn't quite work. The parts that I demoed should work. And all I can say is come back later and ask me in next month's meeting in the Q&A beforehand how I'm doing.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
I did hear you. I just kept on talking when you stopped.
I had to swap headphones because my microphone on the wired earbuds wasn't working too well.
And if nobody has any direct questions about the presentation, I have a question. Why do you have personal servers in the cloud or at home? And why do you use Red Hat or CentOS, or why do you use Debian or Ubuntu?
Well, Willie Williams was trying to ask a question, although he's muted right now.
I didn't hear that clearly. I heard somebody uses CentOS.
There's someone named Willie Williams. He's got his hand up, indicating he wants to ask a question.
Oh, go for it. I stopped sharing so I can see the chat.
Willie asked that
In the chat.
in the chat, can this be installed on Nginx?
Yes, there's it. If you go into the documentation for SeaFile, and I may have missed where it explains how to use Postgres, but there's definitely a chapter in there about using Nginx instead of Apache. And if you're only putting a single service on that port, you don't even need Apache or Nginx. You can just talk to the application directly over HTTP. And I believe it will work with other web servers, but if you've ever used Nextcloud, Nextcloud has a lot of trouble. Like they document well how to use one web server, and then you try to install it in another web server, and it has so many rules about how to route requests that if you're not using the web server that they used, you basically can't get Nextcloud working. I think it's better than it used to be. But SeaFile only had just a few rules that you saw me editing there in Apache, and you can get those rules working exactly the same way in Nginx, just different syntax. It shouldn't be a problem. What's the
Thanks very
difference
much.
between SeaFile and Nextcloud? So Nextcloud is a fork of OwnCloud. OwnCloud went corporate and kind of anti-free software a few years ago. I don't remember exactly what the story and the scandal was, but the Nextcloud and OwnCloud ecosystem are sort of a server in a box kind of platform. It's like Android or iOS for a web server environment. And they want to be the one place where you go to for sharing everything with yourself or sharing everything with your teammates. And that includes you install the file serving app, that's the core utility. But then you can install a mail program on top of that. You can install a task list program. You can install database programs. There's all kinds of apps that you can install into OwnCloud and Nextcloud. And if you're trying to install, if your home server is a Raspberry Pi, that sort of thing might be a little bit of overkill for you. And while I can get LibreOffice and SeaFile to run on my Raspberry Pi, if I was to add Nextcloud into that mix and it wants to install all these apps by default and it's got all these processes running, I might quickly run out of RAM or run out of CPU power for whatever's going on in the background. And the administrative overhead I found is a lot simpler in SeaFile. I couldn't get SeaFile and LibreOffice to work very well with each other, but installing SeaFile by itself is pretty easy if you understand how to configure web servers and host names and stuff. So long story short, I think SeaFile is simpler to install and manage, and it does not have apps that you can install.
Thanks.
So again, I apologize that my notes were incomplete from my original mission, but I hope you learned a few things from me tonight. And I hope that I can
Yep.
at least present a complete document with the original vision by the middle of next month. And you can ask me in the next month, before the next month's presentation, how I'm doing with that.
Okay. We'll do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Can you email me a copy of the notes so I can post it on our website?
Just go to glump.net and look at the first feature article. That's what it is.
Okay.
Do we hang out and talk about other stuff, or everybody drop off, or what do we do?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay, I'll hang around.
One issue is we need to find a speaker for next month. I've never really come up with anything.
Was that addressed to me? I couldn't hear it clearly.
Just in general. If anyone has any ideas of something they'd like to hear about, welcome them. Okay, you mentioned something about you have a server in your basement you need to install in the rack.
Yeah, I've had it for about a year since I moved in here. I was going to put CentOS on it. We talked about that a year ago.
You might
I
want to do
can't
Rocky.
really.
Might want to do Rocky instead of CentOS.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I would use Rocky. I can't do it here because I really don't have the room. It's a pretty loud server, so I have to wear good noise canceling earmuffs to run it. But I'm trying to remember the guy that we got it from. It'll come to me. He had a stroke last year. But we all went up to Jackman together. I gave him a ride home from Jackman.
So that server we got in 2019. Kind of stacked under a couple other things. Check things out and then try to find them to set up so I can do them. So.
Yeah, it's a decent server. I mean, one of the best things about it, it's free.
You can't beat that price.
Yeah. And we're good with what's the name of the place? Synoptic. We're good with them until next April.
What's happening next April?
Our host.
That's what's happening next April. What's it there?
What? I don't. Your microphone is terrible.
You said we're fine until next April. So what's happening next April that'll make it not fine?
I didn't understand you.
Get my audio settings.
Yeah, every time you talk, you get a background noise. I don't know what it is.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Are you hearing me when I speak?
It's almost like you have something whining in the back. It happens when you talk. It's quiet when you're silent. You know, no background noise. But it's really terrible when you talk.
It's probably a server that I have running in the background.
No, that would be constant. I'd hear that if you're not talking.
I don't know. There's a noise filter on my Plantronics microphone. So
Yeah, I assume there's a noise gate involved, and when he's not actually talking, it goes dead silent because some filter is saying that that's quiet.
Oh, could be. Yeah, you're right.
And some of the things Jabber is saying I can understand, and sometimes it gets kind of garbled, and my hearing is terrible, so I have no further comment on any of it.
Okay.
So next month I'll have to remember to shut the server down before the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I see an audiologist every week for breakfast on Sundays, but not professionally. Her sister owns the restaurant we have breakfast at. yeah, I have Jabra earbuds, and they're very good, but they've been lasting about an hour on Jitsi meetings. And my Samsung earbuds are really good for watching TV and stuff like that. They last 3 or 4 hours, but I have trouble getting them connected to Bluetooth on
I
Linux.
wasn't leaving anything to chance. I used a wired gaming headset with a USB adapter.
Which is exactly what I have on. I did have I did have wired earbuds.
I bought a noise canceling Bose headset a while ago, like 3 months ago, and I'm sort of disappointed because the package is like, and it comes with an analog audio cable. I'm like, okay, so that, and in Bluetooth mode, it has a audio input channel that gets sent up to whatever the host is. So you would think that that channel would be available on the analog audio cable, but it's not. You can have analog output from a host to the headset, but the input from the headset to the host is Bluetooth only.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
have I've never seen Bluetooth audio work reliably on a Windows machine. I use my webcam's microphone when I'm using that the noise canceling headset for phone calls. I use the webcam microphone because that's on a USB cable and it's not very far from me and it works.
Yeah, I don't like using the webcam because it can pick up sound from my wife watching TV in the next room.
Yeah, by far the best is a microphone that's just inches from your mouth, and then
Yeah.
you're talking so much louder than all the other noise.
Yeah. And how's my sound quality on this?
It's clear.
Good. This I bought when I was at Red Hat for meetings and stuff like that. Actually, um, I can't give it to you off the top of my head. The specs, I can give it to you later. I sent them to you once. It's a 1U system, but I'll give you the specs later.
Okay.
Yeah, the earbuds are nice because they're comfortable and you can move around and you're not tethered. I don't like to be tethered. Maybe I'll go down to Micro Center and see if they have a good Bluetooth headset. But I think when you have the wire and have a good headset, you get the decent sound quality and everything.
Does anybody know if Office 365 uses the LibreOffice style of web document editor, or does it use Google Docs style? By that I mean, is Office 365 a graphical program running on the back end on the server and you're just using a dumb terminal? Or does Office 365 load a whole big fat client into the client machine, run that in the browser? I think it's probably the latter. It's like Google Docs fat client, but
Yeah.
I haven't looked into it.
Yeah, I know. It's,
I'm not a fan of Office 365 as a corporate captive user.
no, I hadn't used Windows in years. And even when I was on IBM, I had my laptop was Linux, and they supported it.
I think I'm going to call it a night. So I'll see you all next month.
See you later.
Okay.
Thanks for hosting
See
me.
you,
Had a good time.
Okay, Brendan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a great presentation.
Yep. Bye.
Even though I didn't hear part of it.
Oh, you lost some of it?
Well, I kept getting messages on my audio messages on my Jabra headset. And
Lovely.
then I decided to go and see if I could get the Samsung Bluetooth on, but I couldn't get that on. So,
Well, hopefully I can get the kinks out of my how-to and you can read it in a month from now.
okay, that's great.
Talk to you later.
See
Bye.
you next month. Bye.